Hi, welcome to Chat Communications Happenings and Trends. Today with us, we have Janet back with us. She had to take in a little bit of a break, but we are very, very happy to have her back. And I'm glad that you guys in our audience and viewers are going to also have her back with you as well. And with having said that, let's go ahead and get started. So yesterday, Jeff Sessions announced what is essentially a religious task force that would be involved in, I guess, that would be created or is created in the Justice Department to what he said, something along the lines of assure that Americans' religious liberties were being honored and protected. Of course, this should be news to a lot of us because I didn't know that they were even under threat in the first place. But apparently, according to Jeff Sessions and the hard religious right, they are. With having said all that, there was a lot of widespread praise from a lot of religious conservative groups, which obviously makes sense because they always kind of feel like they're victims and that they are also under attack constantly. Of course, this does undermine a few other groups like the LGBT community who feel that now Christians, the hard religious right Christians, would be able to utilize these measures further to help assure that their own freedoms and rights will be restricted so that they can get legally discriminated against by hardcore the religious right. Now, I would be hard pressed to believe that this task force would be used or utilized to protect the religious freedom of religious minorities in the United States, like Muslims and Hindus and things like that. I really believe that this is probably a task force designed to assure the religious right of Christianity. I think when Jeff Sessions was making this announcement, he mentioned a couple of things, one of which was that something to the effect that nuns were being forced to buy contraceptives, which is clearly a jab at Obamacare, which they opted out of. Any type of religious group was able to opt out of that option to assure that their employees that worked for them received birth control if they so chose to go to the doctor and actually get birth control. Of course, nuns probably wouldn't be getting that, but I don't know. I'm not a nun. And so this was an utter misconception of what happens in reality. Because that is not reflective of reality. I think there's a disconnect between the real world and how most normal people behave and the religious right, and of course their continual and constant persecution complex. It's really frustrating. Now, I did see on Twitter some interesting comments, and a lot of them had to do with pretty much equating the actions that was taken yesterday, by Jeff Sessions, creating this task force to, of course, conserve hardcore Christian values and Nazism, when they also created a very similar task force to assure that those very hardcore Christian values were upheld and maintained. But yeah, it's frustrating to see all of these things, especially when you're not integrated or in bed with all of these religious fanatics, because they are. And what's even more frustrating is that these religious fanatics, and they are fanatics, let's not kid ourselves, they are a dwindling part of our population within the United States. I think they only represent something like 20% of the population at the most on a good day. And everybody else is either identified as Christian, but not evangelical in this manner, or some other religion, or not practicing, but believe in a higher power, or agnostic or atheist. So we were supposed to have a very secular nation. That's what honestly is appealing about the United States to so many different people. And when you show an obvious preference towards a particular religious ideology, you are no longer secular. You are only a secular nation in name only and not in actual practice. And so since Janet has joined us back here, I'm going to just throw it over to you. Janet, what are your thoughts?
Hey, all right, so it drives me crazy. It totally drives me crazy that, we're not supposed to put religion and politics together, and they're so married together in this country. It's unreal, but it's not any other religion besides the Christians, so that just drives me nuts. And so when we decided to do the story earlier, I was trying to think of there was a couple of months ago that we were doing a story, and something came up, and Amanda's like, why do we even have a religious freedom, group in the Congress? So I went and I was Googling and stuff, and it drives me nuts how much there is, out there that is like crossing the religion and religion with the politics. And there's like a congressional prayer caucus, there's like all these caucuses and stuff like that have to do with religion. So that just shouldn't be anyways. But then you go beyond that, it's just one religion. Christians, there's different thoughts on different Christianity, but it is all the Christians that get the praise. And why Sessions is even worried about nuns, since he's not Catholic, that should lead off to the Catholics worrying about it. I mean, honestly, I think that they use the Catholics only because they seem so steadfast in this stuff. But even so with them, in the last couple of decades, they're trying to go back, especially with the newer Pope was more passive, like this stuff. And even I get it the sense from the people that I know that are Catholics that it's a little more, they don't necessarily want, preach for like no contraceptives or stuff like that. And I mean, yeah, it's in there, it's written in their religion, but they're not as hard on it. And I feel that the other Christians use the Catholics because they can get away with that, because they can say, oh, well, the nuns and the priests, and then when you're talking about sex and stuff. So I think it's easy for them to throw in Catholics in there. So that actually drives me crazy too, because talk about yourself, your constituents, the people that are under you and what they want, and don't take these fundamentalist Christians and give them everything they want, because they don't make up the majority of the country. They don't. Right. So it just drives me nuts. I don't know. They're going through this whole thing, and it's like they're not protecting religions. This whole thing is set up to protect Christians. And the people that are getting hurt are the LGBTQ community. The women get hurt in these things. It's not.
Well, if you recall, I mean, this is how they want it. In the very religious right, the evangelical Christians, women are essentially second-class citizens. They need to obey their husbands and basically not work and not have any semblance of whatever we want to consider as control or power in any type of relationship, because the man always comes first. It's unfortunate. And one thing that I don't know why, but there was something you had said, Janet, earlier, and I don't remember exactly right now, but what it was, but what it kind of led me to in my brain was that this has been an ongoing trend until we get to where we are today with the whole religious conservatism and how they pretty much control every single branch of government, even though they're only a very small sliver of our population. I mean, they're on our money, for instance, our currency. There was not "In God We Trust." That did not come about until I think about the 60s or 70s with the religious revival. And so that wasn't there because, again, we were considered a secular nation, that religion and politics and in our government did not belong. If you think about the Pledge of Allegiance, which regardless of what you think about the actual words in and of themselves and actually having to do that in a classroom setting, under God wasn't a part of the pledge, which now it is. And it's been like that for at least 40 years. And so you just see this steady increase in this religious movement that has really just taken control of the United States as far as the discourse, because they cry the most, and they do. And I mean, it's kind of conservatism, no offense, or maybe, I don't know, you can take offense, I don't care. But conservatives tend to be, try to find victimhood in anything. And we're going to talk about another story later on where I think this kind of speaks to that idea as well, about how conservatives are always bitching about shit. And they're not victims. They are the ones in power. They are white, Christian, male, a lot of them. And they're the ones that control everything. And so they are not victims, no matter what you may think. They are just not victims. They are the ones that control everything. They get to control the dialogue. They get to control the discourse, which again, we'll get to another story that's going to prove exactly that they're controlling the fucking discourse. And they shouldn't be, because their voices are only 20% of the population, and it drowns out everybody else's. And that's what makes me so angry about this situation, is because, again, like Janet, like you said, it is assuring that it's going to be one type of religion that's going to be protected, and everybody else can go to hell, like literally to them. And these are the same people that hate Judaism, hate Jews, but want to see Israel established so that the second coming of Christ can occur, and then subsequently kill all the Jews. How is that not like crazy sauce? That's insane. These are the same people that believe that and want that to happen, and want to see what is it called, the rapture, which is apparently supposedly a horrible thing to have happen. They want to see the rapture occur. And these are the guys that are controlling our government. That should scare everybody.
I just want to look up something here. So someone was asking.
Plantastic Life says, what percentages of religious Americans are Christians? I think it's about 85%. I imagine it is a large percentage. It is laughable to think that American Christians are persecuted. Exactly. It's the majority of Americans. They're Christian. They identify as being Christian at any rate. Now, again, that small minority of this very hardcore religious extremism represents about 20%, if that, of the population. But I think something of 85% or higher identifies as being a Christian within the United States.
And United States has the largest Christian population in the world, so
yeah.
If that answers anything there. So they're not oppressed in America.
Not at all. Ugh, I'm sorry, guys. I didn't know you guys could see my bookcase like this. I'm going to move that, hopefully. Y'all don't want to see that creepy book. This one. That's creepy.
I do. I like it.
Okay. Janet's first day back, so she gets to see the creepy book. Sorry, guys. All right. Are we ready to move on, or do we want to mention like people can call in, or how do we want to do that? Or actually, Lauren, do you have anything to add before we move on? I guess not.
Sorry. I mean, part of this is, I think, relates to Bush, right? Because like, wasn't something like evangelicals were like emboldened when Bush became president and things like that?
I think they were emboldened when Reagan became president.
It seems like they calmed down during the Clinton years, and then they came back even worse during with Bush, in my opinion.
Well, this was, yeah, I mean, you may be right. I don't exactly remember them being that crazy as they are today. Obviously, I think they've turned even more crazy, if that's even possible.
There's a
but yes,
documentary.
because Bush, it was him that said that he had been appointed by God, right?
Right. There's a documentary, it's old, 2005, maybe 2003, Jesus Camp, which
Yes.
it's very popular, but it talks a little bit about Bush and how he's, you know, emboldened these evangelicals.
I mean, it's certainly possible for sure. I think any conservative president that ends up coming into power when the conservatives come into office, the religious right does become a little bit more emboldened.
I would think that it's for me. I think it's more Bush. It was more Bush that pushed it all out, because if you think about it, with Reagan, he married a divorced woman. So there was I remember. Well, I mean, I was alive at the time. So
I mean, but so did Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean?
Well, the evangelicals aren't acting the same as they did with Bush. They're acting a bit different with Trump, because, like, with Bush, it was like full. I don't know. There's a difference that I can't really seem to articulate. But there is
I don't know. I think
a difference between
similar under these administrations, excluding like you even have these evangelical leaders that have said like Trump was appointed by God, that you know that because the United States is a Christian nation, that you know that God therefore for some reason gets to appoint our president, which is kind of weird because they're also the same people that argue that God doesn't interfere in anyone's lives and doesn't do anything in matters of human beings, because we all have free will and the choice. And so I guess we weren't necessarily any more of a Christian nation under Obama.
Yeah. Also to point out,
Lauren, maybe you're seeing it a little more under Trump, only because Bush was more acceptable to the rest of the population. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, he was from a political family. He was, he's Bush, and Trump is Trump, who's a boisterous idiot, and Bush was just an idiot. I don't know.
I mean, what you are seeing though under Trump, right, is these evangelicals being a lot more content in their hypocrisy, I think. More so than I think they would have been under Bush. I think I couldn't imagine. I don't know, because it's hard to compare when I
think the hypocrisy is about the same.
I mean, yeah, they're still going to be hypocritical to some extent, but at the same time, Bush didn't have the same type of background that Trump has, right? He, married multiple times and multiple affairs and things like that.
You also just got to remember that Bush is like 10 times more religious than Trump.
Yeah, that's true. And so he may have been like more followed a particular doctrine, so they didn't actually have to argue that their morals were being compromised in any way whatsoever, and that hypocrisy may not have been as, I guess, obvious, unless you live around them, like some of us are forced to do. But anyways, yes.
Massachusetts isn't much better, guys.
I mean, what we were just saying, like 85% of the population identifies as being Christian, and then obviously a portion of them are going to be evangelicals, right? Now, there's a lot of evangelical Christians in the South. I live in what's considered the buckle of the Bible Belt. So, I mean, it's just everywhere. It's everywhere. And the hypocrisy is everywhere, and it's not changed that much, but the only thing that has changed, I think, is their acceptance of like at least their supreme leader, because they're authoritarian and they need the illusion of an alpha male to follow, because I guess they just don't feel safe without having somebody there to tell them what to do. But anyways, where was I going with this?
I don't know.
You mentioned like you mentioned living in the Bible Belt, and like a small factoid is like I have 4 or 5 churches just on the street I live on, and they're all different Christian denominations. It's insane.
Oh, yeah. I live right next to like the Southern Baptist Association, like literally right next door. And then there's a church right next door to that, and then there's a church across the street from that, and then there's a church over there. And so yeah, I mean, you're not kidding when you say there's a church on every corner, and sometimes there are multiple churches on the same corner.
There are churches like side by side. If you go into a different street, it's insane. And like the most bizarre buildings will be turned into churches. Like I'll see several warehouses turned into churches, and they're just everywhere.
I mean, they're profitable in this region of the country. They're very profitable.
We don't have
we've got mega churches here.
You don't have a lot of Catholic churches, because I remember going down to the World's Fair in '84 and having to go sit through some weird evangelical mass because my mom had to go to church. Couldn't find a Catholic church, so we had to go sit through that. We did that down in Florida one time too, and I don't know. It's just weird. It's different up here. Like we have tons of churches, but they're mostly Catholic, and then we have, so it's a big difference. Like how the religion is up here, and I'm not saying it's any better, and how the religion is down there. But I mean, I probably only knew a few like fundamentalists and stuff like that. There was a couple of families around here, and that was about it. But you guys got a lot of them down there.
Janet, I'm still having some issues getting your audio. There's like it sounds garbled and very abrupt sometimes. I don't know if you plugged in the fan.
It's kind of staticky.
Yeah.
I'm staticky. Sorry. I'll move inside in a minute, so maybe that'll help.
Okay.
Yeah. So Stephen, and I'm sorry, I'm going to probably butcher your name, Scapoletti, anyways, mentions, and your taxes are paying for the infrastructure the churches use. Absolutely. Yeah, in some cases, because these churches are tax exempt, especially in the South, you pretty much support. I mean, it's pretty much they're supported by taxpayers. There's no doubt at all. It's definitely, I think that they should be taxed, especially if they have the type of money and wealth that they do coming in. I think that they should be taxed. Absolutely. That I feel like sometimes they're just draining resources a lot of the time. And I think that there are smaller churches that are very community focused and community based, which is fantastic. But I don't think I don't think enough of them are. In fact, the many churches that are here around me will not help a certain part of the population because they don't find them to be religious enough or respectable enough or something along those lines. They'll find a way to basically say, well, we really couldn't help or couldn't really give some resources to actually the neighborhoods that are around us because, they just aren't godly enough. And that's despicable. I mean, if you think about what the Christian doctrine was supposed to be about, if you they do really act like Old Testament people that are justifying a lot of their things based off the New Testament, but ignoring some of the better parts of it. It's crazy. I don't understand it. It's a lot of mental gymnastics. It's insane. But they should be taxed because they are draining resources and they aren't really giving back to the communities like they should be. A lot of the time they just like, nah, we'll take from our parishioners and then we'll make an even larger mega church than we had before. Which is like, you need more space. I mean, we got so many churches, guys, and these are the same denominations right across for the street. I don't understand it.
And the people that give money to these churches are the ones that don't want us to have any social programs helping people. They think charity, but they only give to their church, assuming that their church does all this stuff. But when you're looking at this church and it's growing this massive building and the guy's buying his own jet plane and has a yacht and stuff like that, how do they actually think that this money is getting to the people that need it? It's not.
Yeah. I just, that's the thing about the mental gymnastics that is needing to justify anything. Because again, if you are a member of that church and you're giving weekly donations to that church, you have to know that they're not using that money to go back into the communities and help people. You have to know that they are utilizing that to expand and to provide wealth to, I guess, their person that's going to purchase a private jet. I mean, how do you not know these things? Or, I mean, how do you ignore those things, if anything? I have a hard time doing it myself, but again, I just don't fall in line like that.
Those massive churches are basically scams to take advantage of old people and things like that. I mean, it's just, it's despicable.
So I have a question for you guys. So do you believe that because again, it's a sliver of the population that again is controlling all branches of government and things like that. Do you believe that this push is kind of like the last kind of stand for the religious right? Or do you think that they'll be able to indoctrinate even more people? And that's kind of what I'm afraid of happening because they are so prominent now in our government. But do you think that they'll actually be able to indoctrinate younger people to then be a part of that religious right movement?
I don't think so, because like younger people, even the ones who believe in God, are still more secular. Like I have some religious friends, but they just believe in God and they have like their own relationship with the religion, but they're not like, they don't go to church, like they don't push it down other people's throats. They don't even talk about it very much. I think younger people are like less receptible to this stuff. That's at least in my opinion and observation.
I think that honestly, since Trump has been in, I have been kind of looking for that because you think the people that were moving over to Trump and all this, and then there was the push with the Christian, but they don't talk about it. Like the younger people that follow Trump don't really talk about the religious aspect of it. But I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence. I think maybe it will push people, because if they think that this is going to get them further, or if this is how, you know what I mean? Like it's.
I see a lot of young conservatives, like a lot of them are new atheists.
Yeah.
That's true.
That is true. That's true.
So.
There was this maybe a few years ago about these new atheists that were that identified as conservative were like particularly vehemently racist. Is that something you guys have noticed?
Yeah, that's Sam Harris's thing. Mm-hmm. So I mean, yeah, it's not, new atheist doesn't necessarily mean conservative. It just means you're really anti-religious. It doesn't necessarily make you a conservative. It just, I mean, it's racist in any ways, because the main primary focus is Muslims. So, I mean, it's just hiding the racism, but it doesn't, some liberals identify as new atheists and things like that.
Okay. Alrighty. So we are taking calls today, and if you want to call in, the number is 508-534-8585. And we're going to move on to another story. All right, you guys ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So it was reported that, I think today, that Facebook has taken measures and active measures to remove dozens of Facebook and Instagram accounts involved in what they consider coordinated, inauthentic behavior. Of course, they won't really define exactly what that means, so take that as you will. Unfortunately, what has gotten caught up into this inauthentic coordinated behavior and the removal of these pages and sites have been left-wing organizations and left-wing movements, including, I guess, the protest effort, the organizers of these counter-protest measures that are still planned to take place August 10th through 12th, that had to counter a protest against a white nationalist rally that will be in Washington, D.C. during that weekend. And I think we wanted to bring this up to people's attention so that people would check to see if their sites were still online, obviously. And also, I think a lot of us have had some experience with getting targeted by these large tech companies, these large social media companies, and removed or shadow banned or blocked or kicked off the platform in some way. And one thing that I've noticed is that these things and these removal of these sites by large part have been left-wing people and left-wing organizations and left-wing organizers. I think I sent out a tweet with actually no evidence to support it, but that's what tweets are, right? About how even on Twitter, I've noticed that a lot of people that have been shadow banned have been on the hard left. And by the way, the majority of people on the left, I would argue, are pretty peaceful. They want to protest things like white nationalists and should, in their right, be able to do so. But notice how these white nationalist organizations or those white nationalist organizers, they didn't get removed from Facebook. It was the counter protesters. Weird how that is. And I really believe that this is really an effort just for Facebook and other large social media companies akin to Facebook to schmooze up with our current right-wing government. It's unfortunate, but again, this is kind of going back to a small percentage of the population controlling the narrative. And if you are not available to be on social media sites and have a counter voice to pretty hateful people and pretty hateful agendas, then the only dialogue that you see is the dialogue from these right-wing organizations and right-wing people and hateful people that never seem to get attacked or really removed from these social media sites. You still have, for instance, hardcore Nazis on Twitter that for some reason are still verified and still seem to have, I'm a little conflicted because I don't want people to not have a dialogue to some extent. I don't want them to, because we are supposed to have freedom of speech in the United States. And when we start, selecting certain people and saying, well, you can't have that freedom of speech because you are a hateful person, I think that can spiral out of control. It can become a little bit slippery slope. And I just think it is bad news. But at the same time, I really don't want to see them be kind of elevated up either and propped up on a platform, which unfortunately seems to be, at least in this instance, what Facebook has done and is doing. And they are unapologetically doing so as well. They know they removed those counter-protest organizers. Yet, as far as I know, since I last read this report, there was no indication that they got their site reinstated. And so I just wanted to bring that up, guys. What do you think, Jana? We'll start with you. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Hi, yeah, no, I'm on mute. I have Mark's on the line. He actually wanted to talk about the religious portion of it. Do you mind going back to that for a second and then
Sure.
give your thoughts? All right, Mark, you're on.
All right, Mark, go for it.
Okay, so this religious tax force thing is really, they want to, send us back to the 1940s and 1950s where white Christian males controlled everything and everyone. They want to send us back to the days where they controlled women and where black people are treated like second-class citizens. This is what this is all about. You know Jeff Sessions. You know what type of person he is. So this is what this whole religious task force thing is about. It's not going protecting people, religious people. They want to try and send us back to those days.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a message. And because it's only a message when there's really no evidence to support that these people were under attack in the first place, especially in a majority Christian nation. It would be, I would be hard pressed to find any evidence of these people being persecuted in any way. And interestingly, what you also don't see, or you have somebody like Jeff Sessions and this current administration who has assured that the Justice Department has no funding for right-wing to basically monitor and go after right-wing extremist groups that plan terror attacks, and they do.
That funding was cut. He cut it.
Yep, he did. Yet they're going to fund and create an entire task force for religious freedom that was never under threat in the first place.
I mean, it's just like you said when you said the evangelicals were, under Bush. The white supremacy evangelicals are the ones that make the most noise under Trump, because those are the ones he emboldened. The white supremacy evangelicals. This is what this is.
Yeah. It's kind of a weird tactic if you think about it, because again, the majority of the country does not identify with these people that are currently, again, in control. And it seems like instead of, playing to that portion of the country, which is such a small portion, you should be playing to the, rest of the country, especially if you want to maintain power and if you want to continue to get elected. But of course, there's issues with our electoral politics as well. But do they? It's kind of weird.
Yeah, they don't care. They just want to, they don't care what the rest of Americans believe in. They want to suit their agenda to force people to support their agenda, and to force people to defend their agenda. They don't care about the rest of Americans. It's just that they want to feed their whole agenda to everyone, force people to, this is our agenda. You're gonna have to be forced to support it, or this is what it is. But Trump never, and the Republicans and Sessions, they don't represent the majority of Americans. It's just like another way to shove it in our face, to shove their agenda into our face.
It's not.
I asked, earlier, I asked kind of, is this their last hurrah? I really hope that they'll, because they are dwindling in numbers, that they will continue to do so instead of being able to recruit more people into their cause. I really hope so. Alan Parker says evangelicals, by the way. I thought that was funny, so I had to say
it's not an agenda they're pushing. They're pushing an ideology.
Oh yeah, a specific ideology. Yeah.
Yeah, it's more extreme than just an agenda.
Mm-hmm. It's an extremist ideology at that, too.
Yeah.
It's America. It's the Christian version of Sharia law.
I mean, the Republicans are basically the Christian Taliban.
Oh yeah. Except, yeah, I mean, it's absolutely equivalent. I mean, as far as I understand, they don't behead people yet, but it could definitely get to that extreme. I wouldn't put it past them, considering how like war hungry they are. They're okay with bombing people, which is essentially this like beheading. It's just different. It's just a different methodology.
And to go back to like Mark mentioned, the white supremacists, evangelicals, all the evangelicals are white supremacists and nationalists.
Yeah.
I will say that straight up. They are all like that.
Yeah.
So Mark was going to say one more thing, I think. Hold on.
Okay.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, this is like the last hurrah for the white supremacist evangelicals. And, they're like wishing they want to bring it back to the 40s and 50s where they controlled women, where black people were, treated like second-class citizens. Even though there's a small majority, this is their last hurrah. That's why they voted for Trump, and that's why Sessions is doing it, because this is their last hurrah. Why do you think they're doing this and they're being more extreme with their agenda now?
Right. Yeah. I mean, they definitely have a certain ideology and they're sticking to it, and to hell with the majority of everyone else in the country. Absolutely. And it's a hateful agenda. It's these are the same people that say like they hate identity politics, yet they play to identity politics, but it's white identity politics that they're playing for, white male identity politics. They're the persecuted ones. And then it's Christians. That's an identity. Being having some sort of faith is an identity. And now it's suddenly Christians are being persecuted, which again is them playing identity politics. So I think the only reason people say that is so that they don't have people on the left saying, well, black people are persecuted, and they black men, even if they grew up in a comfortably middle-class home, they're more likely to go into a lower middle-class status because of the institutionalized racism that is in the United States. But you can't mention that to these people because that's playing identity politics. It's disgusting. These people are disgusting. That's all I have. I mean, they're horrible. They're horrible human beings. And I'm really glad that they don't represent the majority of Americans, although you wouldn't know it based off of the government, based off of how, I mean, I would be hard pressed to believe that most people abroad would think that most people don't identify with the current administration, because I think that they probably believe that we do, but we don't.
People abroad probably think we're all fundamentalists. Which, I mean, you can't blame them for that view.
No, I don't blame them for that perception. I mean, our media doesn't help. They don't assure that there's counter narratives that represent the majority of the country, because our media really wants to move it towards a corporatist centrist platform, right? And so they're not going to discuss those things like, wow, this is a really right-wing religious extremist government, and we are supposed to have a secular nation. I don't see the media ever saying anything about that. In fact, when I was reading through the original article with the where did I find that? Washington Times? Yeah. Something like that. I don't remember where, but when I was reading the original article pertaining to the task force, there was no mention about anything about being, a secular nation. It was just like, this is happening, and this is the perspective from this conservative group of people. I found another article that pretty much said the same thing, and it was from CBS that said the exact same thing. Well, this is what the narrative is, and this is what Jeff Sessions said, and this is, and there's a lot of praise from these groups, but there was never mentioned anything about how the country is supposed to be a secular nation. Not at all. Not at all. And so it's alarming, because we are, and that's how we were founded. We were supposed to be religious, have a nation that is supposed to respect multiple religions, because it is secular. We are not a theocracy. Yet all of our media and all of our government treat this country like it's a fucking theocracy. And it's deplorably disgusting. Is that a thing? I don't have enough words to define how grotesque this behavior is. Because I want to make sure that we live in a country where everybody has the right to choose what they will. It's not my business if you are a Christian or not. I don't care. And so if you want to practice, Hinduism, Buddhism, if you want to practice Catholicism, Judaism, by all means, go right ahead. Please do. But please do not push your ideology upon me, because I don't care. I don't want it on me. And I just think that is how the nation was supposed to be. That's how it should be. And we should respect that. And it's alarming to me that this isn't even part of the fucking discussion.
I got Andrew on the line.
Alrighty. Andrew, hi.
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, I tend to look at things and try to pull back a little. And we're seeing a repeated pattern here. Like, this is a specific case. But what's actually going on is you've got a status quo where a bunch of small, elite, moneyed interests continue to make a lot of money, right? I don't want that status quo messed with. You've got a surge on the left of working class people getting organised and getting successes and looking very much like they're getting the momentum to do something about that group of rich arseholes. Okay, so, well, Mark talked about going back to the 40s and the 30s, like back to the last time you had a working class surge in the US, right? They'll prop up groups to sow division. Now, puritanical thinking people, so your evangelicals and that works well with the elitist point of view, because it gives them an ideological framework to blame the poor for being poor, right? They don't actually care. The people propping this up don't care. You think the people who supported bathroom bills in red states actually cared?
No.
Right? What they did was sow division. Then they give something for the left to focus on that isn't the fact that they're committing fraud, right? It gives them something to focus on that isn't organising to go against the corruption and the status quo system you've got. So they're propping up evangelical religious zealots like Bolton is a religious freak. Like, that guy is something else. So is Pompeo. They never mention those guys are religious zealots in any of the coverage, but they are. They're nutjob evangelicals who hate Muslims for being Muslims, right? This is an undercurrent, but on the flip side, if those evangelicals actually got to the point where they were a significant portion of your population, they would no longer have that mainstream support, because they wouldn't be sowing division anymore, right? If they started getting over 50% of the vote, if they started representing a much larger group and actually started being a group that had a coherent, organised ideology that was a threat to the ruling elites, they wouldn't be getting their own Jeff Sessions approved task force. They wouldn't be getting any of that. It's a divide and conquer strategy, and they will grab any particular hateful group of assholes they can find if it means keeping the working class divided or keeping the working class under attack even. I mean, they propped up the Nazis specifically because the Nazis were willing to target communists, trade unionists, and socialists. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what they're doing now. Right? Now, we're focusing on the horror of the government being so corrupt it's propping up this ideology, but the people with actual power behind it, they're not invested in that ideology either. This is purely a tool to divide and conquer the left, right? And they will do it with nationalists, they'll do it with white supremacists, they will do it with religious nut jobs. Even the targeting Muslims had no real basis in anything they actually cared about. It was just a convenient narrative to play to keep people divided and focused, and not focusing on the fact that the real enemy here is a small group of capitalists who continue to burn our planet to the ground so they can continue a organized system of theft.
Yes.
Right? Now, these going back, just because the root cause and the root reason this is propped up is, well, capitalism in our current world, that doesn't mean we don't have to take seriously the religious nut jobs and the white supremacists and everyone else, right? So we do need to deal with them specifically, and we also need to deal with the larger problem that is manufacturing. It's going to keep manufacturing these things and throwing it at the left, right? It's going to keep happening. If we somehow manage to, like, if you look at what happened with Charlottesville last year, and it was horrific when they did Unite the Right, and Heather Heyer died, and there was a massive amount of public support swinging in favour of the people protesting against the Nazis. Did you notice the way that the support for your Nazis just kind of dried up? In the space of a couple of weeks, just kind of disappeared. All of a sudden, Richard Spencer can't get a speaking gig and he's going broke. Well, they polarised the population too much in one direction, and the people behind the scenes decided that was a broken tool and they were moving to something else, right? That's what I saw when I saw all of that happen. I don't doubt they're all still there. I don't doubt there's a whole bunch of people who are willing to put their hands up and be stooges to continue to divide the working class against the elites. Yeah, and this is just another way of doing it. They're also going to try to entrench as much. They're going to try and make as big a mess as possible, right, for Bernie Sanders to walk into when he takes government, to buy them as much time as possible to continue robbing the working class blind as far as they can into the future, because the people at the top probably know their time's almost done.
Yeah, it's not sustainable at all.
No. So, but no, that's my take on what I'm seeing with all of this. They will continue manufacturing real threats. Don't get me wrong, they are more than happy to actually kill people to do this, to keep the working class divided and in line.
Hi, Michael, by the way. He said, hi, Panda, Lulu, sense of outrage here. Great job. Love the show. Andrew, I think your takes are very, very welcome. They're very perceptive. I think that, I think a good, I agree. I think that this is another tactic to ensure that we kind of shift our focus onto another essential point of attack where we're threatened now, or friends of ours are threatened, people we care about are going to be threatened. I think this is probably a lot more constructive way to assure that you continue to divide the population over something like Nazism and white supremacy, even though there's obviously a lot of overlap here with these groups. But because of how many people are religious in the United States, and even those that don't identify with evangelical, they're not that religious, can still say, yeah, I see nothing wrong with this particular task force. Yeah, it seems like a good thing, because there's still that underlying narrative that the Christian faith is always under attack in the United States. Unfortunately, it's not a true narrative, but it's a I guess it's an agreed upon narrative nonetheless, even if it's not true. So I think this is probably a lot better to utilize religion as over anything. I mean, God, everybody's utilized religion for wars, right?
Where Goring basically said what he was doing.
What's up, Andrew?
What?
The Nuremberg trials, and I think what's his name, Goring, was the one who said it. No working class person's ever going to agree to want to go to war anywhere, right? You have to, they're under attack, and this is just an extension of it.
Yeah, I actually read this tweet, or excuse me, this comment yesterday about how the Nazis basically assured that their voice was more prominent over others, and it was to, again, pretend like your faith, your nation is under attack. And then for the pacifists, it's to basically say that they're no longer patriotic, those that see through the bullshit. so those on the left that were saying, hey, no, we are not under attack. Let's think rationally about the situation. This is a hateful group of people. They were suddenly now unpatriotic and didn't, I guess, uphold the values of their country. And you're seeing a lot of that narrative and that dialogue happen in the United States as well. I'm sure there's other places throughout the world where this could be happening too. I think there's a general right-wing shift to some extent. Of course, there's also a populist wave as well. And there's some overlap there, but I think one is more genuine than the other. I think the right-wing populism that Trump obviously spoke to was just a show. It wasn't true. He had no intention of doing anything remotely populist. I mean, just look at all of the policies he has implemented. He has given massive tax breaks to the rich, and he wants to do even more tax breaks for the rich, which, as we've seen, does not help the working class people at all. In fact, wages have gone down since those tax breaks were implemented. But then let's focus on religion, because now our religion is under attack, and now we're being attacked by our own religion. It's wild. It's nuts. Yeah, it was fake populism. Sure. I wish I knew the context of this. Hold on. Okay, so Lednerg states that one good thing is, and I like this thought, one good thing is that the right are only used to fighting centrist. They're out of their depth with the actual left. But I think some of the right are really trying to get ahead of this left-wing movement, right? Because they are, as Andrew mentioned, assuring that they can get all the money that they can before cross your fingers 2020 comes and we get an actual president for the people in there. But yeah, I don't think the right is accustomed to fighting with actual left-wingers at all. Because if you noticed how Fox News behaved to somebody like Alejandra Ocasio-Cortez, for instance, they don't know what to do with her. And they sure as hell don't know what socialism or communism is. They have this like weird thought about what it is. And I saw a segment on Fox News about something like, Tucker Carlson, for instance, talked to Cornel West. And Tucker Carlson even admitted in that segment, yeah, I like all those things that Cornel West was talking about. And he literally said, I like all those things because we have for too long seen nothing benefit the majority of Americans. That's what Carl Tuckerson, I never say his name right, so I'm probably not saying it right, but that's what he said in that segment. And it wasn't a great moment for Cornel West, because I don't think he described democratic socialism well. But at the same time, he did get the opposing side to admit, like, yeah, it hasn't been working. It's not working. I thought that was pretty interesting to hear from Fox News. They've had panels on there trying to figure out what this wave of actual left-wing populism was about, what it looks like. They went through the policies, and they're like, and then their panelists even were like, yeah, I like those things. I really do. I like, regarding Alejandra, they were basically like, yeah, she worked hard to get that to win her primary. And they admitted that, it wasn't given to her, like in so many cases. I mean, they were essentially building her up, I would argue, which Fox News technically isn't supposed to do. But I like I said, I don't think they know what to do with them, because they don't know. Do what?
Conservatives have no frame of reference for arguing with actual lefties, because they've been dealing with liberals for so long that they think liberals are the left. Like, they don't understand the actual political spectrum. And liberals have let liberals have let conservatives define them as leftists, which is why
Yeah.
a lot of liberals think they are left. I mean, they just have no frame of reference of how to deal with this.
I think, Lauren, that's perfect. You hit the nail right on the head. The conservatives have for fucking too long been able to define the quote unquote opposing side to the point where even anything that shies away from their own extreme conservatism must therefore be left wing. I was literally in a discussion with somebody on Twitter not too long ago who didn't realize that there were centrists in the country. Didn't realize that, that our media talks to them, and that all that actually, didn't realize that there was really a spectrum of people on the left, just like I would imagine there's a spectrum of people on the right. And I think that because we've got these extreme conservatives and this extremism able to define everybody else that deviates from them, you get a whole clumping of people that we just don't see it eye to eye. I will not ever respect or get along with this interest. That's just how it is. We do not see eye to eye. If you are okay with 45,000 people dying every year because they don't have access to affordable health care, you and I are not friends. We have nothing in common as far as I'm concerned, because that keeps me up at night. And if that doesn't keep you up at night, I don't want anything to do with you. If you're okay with the fact that that immigrants are constantly getting penalized and detained, even under the Obama administration, that they're continually getting deported, even though they're not nonviolent people, then again, you and I have nothing in common, and I don't want to be your friend. I don't want to know you, and that's centrist to me. But I think the left does something a little better, and they recognize a lot of they recognize nuance. I'm talking about the real left, not the fake left. They recognize nuance, and they recognize spectrums of people. And I think that you've got centrists and then the hard right that have no idea what that looks like. And I think that we are in a very advantageous state right now, because those people on the right don't know what to do with us, don't know how to argue with us, don't know how to assure that our message isn't as popular as it is. Because when we are able to get it out, when we are able to bypass the fucking centrists, get past that fucking gate and get it out to the masses, people are like, wow, there are other people that think like me? What? Because they don't.
The people who agree with those things they're fascists. There's no other way to describe it. And like recently, Joe Rogan's problematic for a lot of reasons, but he had a good moment on his show where he kind of went on a rant about immigration, and I don't know who he had on. He had on one of his like really hippie stoner comedy buddies, but he basically said, if you support this and this and this, then you're not on the fucking team. You're just not on the fucking team.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very simple and like good way to put it. You're not on the team.
Yeah, and I think that it astounds centrists too, that we would be so opposed to them. I think they're like, you guys should have been in line with us, right? I'm like, you guys needed to be in line with us because we actually reflect the majority of the fucking country's values.
Liberals
don't know it.
Liberals think that, like, when leftists tell them that they're not a part of the left, liberals think, like, oh, you're just, like, trying to gatekeep the left. But it's like, no, like, these terms have been defined for at least a fucking century. Like, I am just giving you what has already been defined and labeled.
Exactly.
Like, if you still believe in any form of capitalism, you are not on the left, or you may be center left, but you're not left.
I think centrists they don't want the facade to go away. They want the right to believe that they are the left and that we're like the hidden stepchild or whatever, like we're put over here, and they're trying to hide. They don't want I think they know that they're center. I think they know this, but they don't want
not
that.
center.
Well, I know they're like right.
You're right. Yeah.
But I'm just saying. I think they know, they understand that they are not left. But the reason why they keep trying to say that they are left is because they don't want us. Like they just want us to bump off the map. They don't want anything to do with us.
I think that's like true with like the liberal politicians, but I think with like, just like normie liberals, they want to believe they're left because they relate being left with being like on the right side of history and like being good. Like they don't want to face the fact that they're not on the left.
They should listen to some of the lefties and get a clue. And then they will be on the right side.
They call us fringe. I mean, they refuse to believe that they're just in a denial.
Yeah, they do call people on the left fringe, even though the majority of people on the left would actually be center per all the polling suggests this. But if you break down the issues again, the center of the country is with the left, and of course there are more fringe left people, but at the same time, a lot of leftists actually represent, that's where the country is. Like I keep saying, the country leans left. And
country,
it's surprising to me.
I think the country leans center left because most people are just in favor of social democratic policies. Yeah. So which is a centrist idea, in my opinion.
And per all other countries, right? It's very centrist. That would be the center. But that is actually where the American values are too. They do mimic other countries that are considered more quote unquote progressive, right? It's just, again, you've got centrists that have these corporate interests that are in these political positions that then get to control the dialogue. We have our media that reflects centrist interests and corporate interests because those overlap and are the same that get to control the dialogue. And that's why you wouldn't know it unless you actually paid attention as to where the country does actually stand.
So we didn't really get to that second story.
Oh yeah, I forgot about it, didn't I? About the Facebook. Sorry. We can bring that back up again on Thursday if that's okay with you guys. Because I think there's a good discussion to be had about that.
Yeah. No, I think we can definitely bring that back up on Thursday.
One thing that I do want to add is that I think that the left does need to work better. The real left obviously needs to work better in kind of organizing themselves so that they can push back these moneyed interests, because we have a huge obstacle against us, which is money, right? And money controls the world, unfortunately. And a lot of those on the left are working class people that just don't have those same type of funding. And I think then therefore we need to work on organizing a little bit better.
Most people on the left who are doing organizing are usually doing the counter protests for Nazis and things like that. They're not being involved in electoral stuff. They're doing more on the ground work, which in my opinion is more important.
I think that it's more important on a local level for sure, because again, your local politics does control a lot more than federal, at least and influence your everyday direct lives. That's where it's at on a local level. And so I think that the left is actually pretty good at organizing in a grassroots perspective. But if we want to really become a lot more mainstream, we have to kind of branch out a little bit. And hopefully it's not going to happen overnight. So hopefully it's obviously a progressing thing. And I'm just happy to see the left is actually really fighting back. It's like about fucking time, in my opinion.
I think there's more of us. I think there's more of us now, and I think that or just more people getting it, and I think there was people there, but I think they're opening their eyes a little bit more, and I think that's a lot of the momentum too. So we'll get.
Yeah.
You have to.
I don't know if I believe with this Plantastic Life about the labels. Labels often shut down conversations. I'm as guilty as much as anyone. Yeah, but it also helps identify kind of,
You need to identify the ideology.
Right.
Like there's a difference between social democrats and a socialist, or a socialist and a communist.
Yes, absolutely.
Those differences are very significant.
Yes.
And they're important.
So I think it's important. It's important. But if you start using them as like the only method, of course, right?
Yeah,
it's not constructive. But if you use it in a, I'm just kind of trying to find compromise with Plantastic Life here about their comment about easing up on the label usage. I mean, that we're human and we're going to utilize labels.
Well, I mean, if you have an ideology, it needs to be defined because there's going to be differences in how you perceive things.
Absolutely.
What your strategies are.
And there's
so absolutely needs to be defined.
Yeah, there's the issue right there that I think some people don't do on the left. Some people are great at doing it on the left. It's that they say, yeah, I believe in socialism. Okay, what is that? They could go a step further and help define some of that terminology so that it helps inform more people as opposed to just kind of leaving it out there and then running off, because again, it doesn't help when people don't have context.
Well, I want to say that's why I call myself a non-label lefty, because why I think it's important to know like socialism and the difference between communists and socialists and stuff like that. Like why I think that's important is because they each have their own ideology and we need to know the differences there on what these are. But I wouldn't call myself a socialist or call myself a communist or call myself a Democrat or call myself any of those labels, even like green and stuff, because I believe in a lot of different things from each of those ideologies. And so I think maybe that's kind of what Plantastic Life might have been saying is more like we need to work together. We can't be like, I'm a socialist and I'm a communist and I'm, I'm a green, and we can't, because we all have a lot of the same stuff, even though we have, we have some differences in ideology. But we all know, like,
we have overlapping interests.
Yeah, and that's what we all need to work on. So
we have the same interests, but just different ways of going about them. Like an anarchist and a social democrat are not going to agree on strategy.
No. But they can agree that we have a problem and a very corrosive system, and that we need to ensure that system doesn't persist.
Yeah, they can agree on the broader things, but when it comes to actually the more specific in details.
I think that this is a good point, because once we can kind of get control, if hopefully we can get control of these of our government as actual people on the left with overlapping interests, then we can have a fight, an internal fight as far as how we go about it. But until then, let's kind of set those like differences aside and kind of work together and tackle the things that we know we can get. And I think we can tackle those things. I think that we do actually have the numbers on our side. I really do. It's just a matter of assuring that narrative does reach the people, because right now that's why so many people don't participate in voting, period, because they feel so disconnected from electoral politics.
So, do you want to go eat?
I got my food. Yes.
That's
it's ramen. It's going to be delicious.
I know. I want some now.
But yeah, I do want to eat. I want to thank you guys for being with us tonight. And we will be back with everybody on Thursday. And thank you guys so much for watching. See you guys later. Oh,